I've had a tooth pulled, wisdom tooth, about 20 years ago.
Oh, right, yeah.
Not pleasant.
Well, it's a back one. Wisdom teeth are long gone. Uh, Hi, Jesse.
Hello.
So almost finished it, but didn't quite finish it.
Yeah, these are fairly lengthy.
Not a bad problem to have.
You guys are big comics readers or Karl Barks fans?
Yeah, I'm a big Barks fan actually. Yeah,
Good to
yeah, yeah. Carl Barks was like a big part of my childhood. I grew up with the DuckTales show, the '80s show, and from there I got into the Barks comics. So yeah, with the when Gladstone was publishing them, so they yeah, so they yeah, so the same way that's how I got into Barks. Yeah.
I barely remember DuckTales. I think it was on either Nickelodeon or Disney. Like it was on cable TV at some point. But I barely remember that in particular. I do like comics. So I used to steal them because we used to get my brother used to get a subscription of the standard Marvel. Like I liked X-Men Uncanny, read it as a teen, and I've been like trying to dig for a bunch of old comics that I used to read as a teen. And I'm really into nostalgia in general. And I'm just trying to find all the artists that made all my childhood like comics and shows. Like I watched like a Charlie Brown documentary not too long ago, and I try to keep up on the artists that like did Disney. I'm into like animation too, so like I haven't gotten. I'm trying to go back and start collecting them again. Mainly, probably start with standard Marvel and DC, and then work my way up to the more obscure, probably less popular stuff like you know stuff like that too. Like there's DuckTales, but then there's also like Gargoyles and the X-Men from '94, which they made a new one of that. But I'm sorry, I'm kind of off topic. But yeah, those are my general interests.
Cool. Well, you joined the right group. Just stick around. You'll find a lot of great stuff here.
They got the Donald Ducks in hardcover, moldy volume. I used to have a big bin full of Donald Duck comics next to my bed until the early 70s, and my father grabbed them and gave them away to a friend and said I was too old for them at some point.
I actually wasn't even aware that it was a comic. I guess it was a comic first, and then it got adapted into an animation later on that I saw.
Yeah, I don't recall the DuckTales really. That was probably a little bit after my time. So I'd more or less sort of finished with Donald Duck in the 1973. So my mother had bought them occasionally from some point in the late 60s.
I watched them probably in the late 90s, early 2000s on cable. So
I'll have
it's
a
just really interesting to hear that. And I look forward to trying to hunt the comics down. Maybe there's a reprint.
Yeah, they have them in multi-volume sort of hardcover. There's probably a hardcover. How many comics would the hardcover deal with? Maybe about 10 comics for each hardcover or something like that. You just walk into a comic shop. Most comic shops would, probably have the entire set.
I must be in the wrong. Well, number one, I don't go. I've been trying to scrounge my comics off of whoever sells comics in general. Like, for example, I went to Ollie's and they had like the Golden Age Batman and Superman and for like $3 and $4. But I'm like, oh, it'll just sit on a shelf, so I never got them. But it's like I stopped going to actual comic shops. Like I would go to thrift shops or bargain stores. So perhaps in a legitimate comic shop, they might actually have them.
Yeah, I doubt you'd find Donald Duck comics cheap. You'd I have picked up a couple of Donald Duck comics on their own, but they want something like about $20 or something like that. It's cheaper to buy the modern reprint, the modern multi-volume set.
Yeah, well, I guess we're really lucky that they're reprinting a lot of stuff like that lately. But I feel the variant covers kind of make me sad when they do reprints because I want all original art.
Hey, right, is that the Donald Duck hardcover multi-volume? You'd know them, would you, Dave? The modern multi-volume set.
The series we're going through. You're talking
Yeah,
the publisher?
yeah. I was trying to look it up on the net. Where are we?
The name of the publisher is Fantagraphics. The first stop would be Amazon.
Yeah, probably. That's what they said. They've got the Superman and Batman too, and that's like maybe that's expensive on there. Some of them are, some of them aren't. The older it is, the more expensive it gets.
What's his Amazon's not working for me.
We can do it later, Stephen. Let's just get on with it.
Okay. I'll have a look at the comic then, I suppose. Let's see. Right, okay. Okay, let's see what we got. The Lost Peg Leg Mine. This is one I remember. Because I could remember the pack rats.
Volume 18. We started at the beginning. This has been a year and a half now, and we're just a little past halfway. It's taken us a year and a half to get to volume 18. And we got another year and some to go. It's amazing how much Barks did. It's really amazing, the output.
Well, here's one of his typical sort of nice little scenes, a suburban theatre. Everyone's walking out. That was a strong element in the culture. TV had just shown up. But the theatre was, this local cinema was still a pretty big item. Of course, they adopted those big 70mm colour films to try and attract the audiences back with, I know, Ben-Hur and all that sort of stuff. But you look at this little image here, what do you think?
I love it.
It's something he can get away with because they're such zoological characters. He can have the nephews in a almost perfect line of repetition, slightly different. The beaks and their eyes all slightly different.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists, like especially Disney artists, they kind of have a format of like a layout of what they design their characters as, so they're easy to redraw and reposition. Very repetitive at times, but it's great for the animators.
Well, Scrooge is reminiscing that he could have had a few bags of gold. They'd decided weren't worth chasing, but it's come back to nudge his conscience. He's just never happy until he's grabbed some more money, grabbed some more wealth.
Seasons come.
So somebody's complaining, that people didn't like the fact that Elon Musk was so rich, and the guy said, well, it's not that easy. Try and grab his money. It's invested in all these things. And he goes, what do you think? He's got a big money bin somewhere like Uncle Scrooge. I remember that, yeah, the dynamite. Scrooge was looking at the dynamite. That was the first thing that jogged my memory. There's a nice little scene. It looks like something from The Far Side, doesn't it? Look at the rabbit.
Oh, yeah.
Pile of rocks. So you can see, well, you'd be pretty suspicious The Far Side was inspired by Barks' work. What do you reckon, David?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Well, a lot of strong elements in the Donald Duck Adventures were these far out trips outside of suburbia. As time went on, these adventures became more and more suburbia located. But occasionally it'd still go out into the wild adventure. That was the thing, of course. So he finds the saddlebags and they're full of rocks. So he thinks he was fooled all those years ago. But they start to discover the activity of the pack rats. The pack rats would put other objects in place of the objects they'd steal. And Donald Duck's crazy car would seem to sort of be based on some sort of a 30s sports car with contradictory features, I think. Had some features belonging to one particular sports car and then some that belonged to another. So we have the pack rats. This is Barks doing his non-humanoid animals. And what's the difference? Well, these anthropomorphic ducks have the ability to think, to contemplate, and the animals obviously are just generally running with a program. They don't spend their time contemplating excessively. They're just fulfilling the program that they have. Well, I find they can trade to get stuff back. So he goes to get some peanuts. They finally get the car key back after he's gone to the trading post. and they screw up
Mhm.
and lose all the nuggets
Hmm.
and sail off into the sunset with the pack rats have got the peanuts or something. So, God, how many volumes of the hardcover would there be? There'd be up, what is it up around 36 or 40 or something like that, is it?
Something like I think it's like 31, 32, something like that.
And
Altogether.
would that cover his entire issue of Donald Duck and Scrooge, does it?
Once they finish the series, it'll be the entire Carl Barks legacy of Duck Comics, plus some other things he did, which we saw in earlier volumes. He did some non-Duck comics. Not many, but some. We saw those as well.
Very consistent then.
But yeah, it's amazing. I mean, these are 200-page volumes, and there's at the end probably 32, 33, 34 volumes of them. That's
Oh my goodness.
yeah, when you count it all together, it's well over 600 individual stories. It's over
Wow.
600. Yeah.
What an awesome career to have.
Some of the best comics ever done, as we've been saying repeatedly as we been going through these over the last year and a half.
Yeah, I don't think anybody has sort of matched the amount and quality of the set. Would there be any other comics that could match it?
It'd be a small list. Be a small list.
20,000 Leagues Under a Flat Car.
Mhm. I love the fat fish in the bowl. That's like that's a funny like character design.
Yeah, well, you get these odd, like the lamp. You've got some peculiar
Yeah,
figure on the lamp.
yeah.
Yeah, the fish looks a bit, yeah,
Mhm.
a big fish in a small bowl. There's probably a message there.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of the famous stories, isn't it? You know, some people
Yeah, yeah.
they find themselves a fish bowl, they can be the sharks.
Mm.
Does anybody remember the fish's name again?
I don't know. Yeah, it was a fish in other comics, was it?
I'm pretty sure it was kind of a popular like side character in the cartoon
Oh,
that it
maybe
had its
the cartoon series that
yeah.
you watched. The cartoon series came out in the mid '80s, something like that, which was I wouldn't have even known about it sort of way after my
Oh,
time.
okay.
Okay, Donald Duck's sure he can do any sort of job, which was probably true of the era. This was an era where generally you could sort of easily get a job, which is not the way things are now. There was a demand for labour. The only way you could lose a job is you had to be uh, rather incompetent or something like that. If you generally did your job okay, you had steady employment. This hadn't been the case before World War II, though. So Barks's ordinary career as a worker was back in the 20s and 30s. Okay, he's come to a fish farm, and that they want the eggs, so Donald's trying to lay the salmon or whatever it is in a chicken roost. Okay. Oh, right. It's frozen fodder. So he has to grind it up. And he gets frozen.
Mhm.
It's always a common one. He's trying to warm himself next to one of the old stoves. Clean the bottom of the fish tanks. And he's got a kingfisher. So the expert has fizzled his job again. You're just not good for any work around a fish hatchery, Duck. You're not even an expert bungler. I didn't scare the fish. You didn't. Oh my stars, a kingfisher. I usually get him by setting a mouse trap on a post.
Funny how how Donald talks about these birds. Well, of course he is a bird, but but yeah, but he's basically like a man who happens to look like a bird. Yeah.
I'm in Australia, and yeah, the famous kookaburra is a variety of kingfisher. The kookaburras are sort of bird that will, if humans hold out food objects, they'll come and try and snatch them. And in tourist spots, the kookaburras will jump on the ground next to you if you throw food down or something like that. And but they like standing, sitting on the top of a telephone post, checking out the tourists. I don't know how the American kingfisher would go. Maybe its diet's more exclusive. Well, a tar baby gets attacked straight away. Who was it I used to listen to in school? Name, I think, was Brer Rabbit, and they had a tar baby in that.
Yeah.
I think that was the Uncle Remus stories, if I remember correctly. Donald's got a telescope. And he's looking at the School of Whales. Gets a crazy idea. If he captures one, he can charge money for people to see it. It's got a small inlet of water. Goes out on a speedboat. Figures it won't work, so he needs a decoy to lure the whale. And the whale goes for it. I'm from the Humane Society, Duck. Have you been feeding this whale properly? This is why democracies fall.
Mhm.
Everybody thinks they're the boss. It's old Greek wisdom. As I pointed out, it's the story of the man, the donkey, and the boy, and they're walking past. This is a demonstration of democracy. They walk past each crowd. You remember the story where the crowd would say, "Oh, look at those idiots. They're walking a donkey along to town. They can put the boy on the donkey, save him walking." Next crowd says, "Ah, what a lazy boy. The father should be on the donkey." Come another crowd. Well, they both get on the donkey. Another crowd looks at him and says, "Oh, look at that poor donkey." Eventually, they lose the donkey. An old man is following them and says, "Well, that's the trouble. You try to please everybody and you'll end up pleasing nobody. That's the story of democracy.
Sounds about right. We've got why is this moral of the story? Kind of like fairy tales.
Yeah, well, it was the story of Athens. Now, democracy had its good points. Well, Athens' relative democracy, it had a fairly of male citizens, which was only probably about 10% of the population. That was pretty good democracy in 500 BC. And the democracy helps a lot with economy. You know, a lot of people, it opens things up for a lot of people to make money, and Athens became very wealthy in trade. But you end up with everybody thinking everything should go their way, and they tend to look for handouts. And eventually Athens ends up bankrupt and starts being the bully of the Aegean to try and make up for its lack of the amount of money that people want. I don't suppose you know it's unlawful to keep wild animals in captivity. Wonder when they made that law in America. There certainly would have been a stage where they didn't care about wild animals. Well, they has to dig the way out for the whale, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie were happy to hear the school bell going. Get out of the work. Well, Donald's flying a plane again. This time he's doing skywriting. Well, it's an interesting image of the plane. Donald Duck's got his flying helmet on. And it's interesting in the background. So we've got a helicopter shows up, and then the helicopter's flying upside down. And then there's another plane upside down in the corner there. And then Gyro Gearloose shows up with his mini helicopter. Look, you got this plane here that's been set up like a house, and somebody's got a stove inside the plane and has hung their washing. And Scrooge is running for council or something like that. Donald tries to offer his services for advertising and is trying to do Scrooge. Something to wonder if I think this might be one that I did see as a kid. There was a fair few I've seen as a kid that I can recall.
Mm.
And you've made him look like a Chinaman. Down with taxes. So, doing the role of Elon Musk. What's your stand on smog, McDuck? Okay, so by the mid-50s, smog had become a big issue in American cities. The car ownership rapidly grew after World War II. Nixon signed the Clean Air Act in the early 70s, I think it was. I can still remember Nixon being elected. I think it was, 1968. Yeah, it was just people were going, Nixon had won the election. I was sitting in school. Somebody made a mention of it. Okay, just things are not working out every time he makes a smoke image.
Mhm.
It gets wrecked. All right, I used to love the images of the skyrockets. They banned personal usage of skyrockets and firecrackers and all that in Australia in the 70s. But when the Asians showed up, they the Asian shops would stock them anyway, even though they were banned. Although they might have caught up with the shops. I remember around the year 2000, there was people were shooting off heaps of fireworks long after they'd been personal use had been banned. Anyway, they've made a mess of things. Your Uncle Scrooge has gone to Alaska, and your Uncle Donald is hitchhiking to the Isle of Capri. Well, Donald's watching TV. The nephews have got a train set. I'm trying to calculate it so the trains would go on a divided track. Quiet, you kids. This is a tense scene. The safe crackers are in the bank. They're surrounded by G-men. So you've got this sort of external image Sparks would do. So you've got the house in black and the sky looks rather dark. There's a rainstorm. And Donald Duck's confusing what's happening on the TV with what the nephews are doing. Okay, so for some reason, there's a couple of runaway trains that are going to crash into each other. So the nephews sort of work out calculations, are looking for this mathematician who's sort of stuck in a snowstorm somewhere. Okay, we've got a computer from the 1950s, which probably sort of looks like one did back then. They had electronic computers by that time, and they looked a bit like that. $12 million electronic brain at the army base. And 20 years after this, you had the pocket calculator. There's two trains. One's a sort of standard steam engine. The other one's a diesel locomotive. Scrooge has got the answer. His tremendous wealth means that he can do something about it rather quickly, and he drops mattresses in between the two trains. Donald Duck realises his TV watching was instrumental. Okay, they're doing people are doing ice sculptures of some kind, snow sculptures. So they're taking pity on the two poor kids. Who's going to win the prize? Okay, they're walking along. You look at this house on the hill. This house on the hill is one of a fairly expensive construction of the 1930s, because you see this sort of glass feature going out the front, some sort of a terrarium or something like that. Okay, there's the comments on modern art. We can easily beat monstrosities like that one. Sure, we know the exact kind of statue that will win, which is pretty much covers what I think of modern art. Okay, they're back to, they've created a founder of Duckburg, Cornelius Coote. Sometime back in the Puritan era. And Donald Duck. Yeah, completely mischievous behavior. Doesn't conceive of how wrong his behavior is if you can get away with it. Destroys their snow statue in the trying to aid the poor kids. Then figures, well, I can sort of win the prize and give the poor kids some money. So he makes a fake snow statue. Search no further. So this is the thing, Donald Duck is just so completely dishonest in this little adventure. He's destroyed the honest statue, a wicked deed, and he's replaced it with a dishonest piece of work. Well, I figure they can melt the statue and it's not working. And they find out it's a fake. They fill it up with water. And the poor kids win. Donald Duck realises that that was a plan anyway. Well, here's this curious little image. So you've got the black silhouettes of Donald and the nephews. Okay, Donald has found a new job. And his job is the equivalent of Vice, which was considered pretty cool back in the 1950s. So he's watching the border. And the nephews aren't allowed to remain behind. So he's got smugglers. The guy's smuggling cameras. Just trying to think now. Yeah, that was back during an era where you had a fairly sort of large tariffs on goods coming in. Well, at that time, the big camera maker was Japan. In the mid-1950s was when there was sort of the Japanese camera making was sort of taking off. And it was displacing the German camera making. Yeah, that sort of camera would have been pretty typical of the era. So you've got sort of a fairly plain sort of a 35mm with a rangefinder. Probably not as good as Leica. Leica would be the one with the top lens. Okay. There's got another guy with parakeets. And yeah, quite a plan. Donald gets covered with the parakeets and confusingly ends up on the wrong side of the border, allowing the guy to go into the US, thinking he's going back to Mexico. He suddenly realizes it when he sees his border posts on the other side. But Huey, Dewey, and Louie have been in the background and informed the authorities about the smugglers. And they'd used signals with a mirror. How many people could do that these days? It'd be very rare. But there would have been a few in the earlier part of the 20th century still. The costume party. Okay, he wants to be a knight, and everybody's saying that the knight, what I always wanted to be was a knight, but a knight's out of date. And that doesn't deter Donald. He's got a knight's outfit. Oh yeah, the famous image of the knight being lifted onto the horse. It's actually jousting armour, which was thicker and heavier to prevent penetration, but the initially the original full plate armours were thin. Then as the musket came along, they started making thick plate armour again, and I suppose they would have been had to have been hoisted in some cases on horseback, even on the battlefield. Well, he's found himself a load of dogs are barking at him. And toss him out of the bus. Okay, we've still got the typical upper class, you know, the overweight lady with, you know, the pearl necklace and stuff like that, which was so typical of the TV in the 1950s. One guy's been a cowboy, which wasn't quite so out of date at the time. The cowboy had only died 30 years prior to this comic. And oddly enough, Daisy's dressed up as a princess, which must be almost out of date as well, but perhaps not quite. One guy's a jockey and another guy's some sort of a spaceman. Or is he, not sure what this guy's supposed to be. Yeah, it's sort of like somebody would use a jetpack or something like that. And you got the rich dude with a tuxedo on, which probably was starting to become a bit rare by the 1950s. One guy's wanted to be a lion tamer. And he's equal with Donald and he's screwed up because the lions are too much for him and the lions escape. You got the crowd attempting to escape through a door. Donald goes in and the lions can't bite through his armour. And Donald has become the hero. Oh, here we've got the fish bowl again with a couple of fish, so it's not the same fish. And Donald thinks he can name flowers. So he gets the idea he's going to set up every different sort of flower in the backyard. Petunias, black-eyed Susans. He's got bulbs he leaves in the kids' bed. And the kids are looking, decided they're going to leave, go back to grandma's. But they find some man-eating plants cheap that nobody wants. And Donald's in trouble. Well, you look at this little scene here, I like that. You know, you've got this nice hedge here, house, a tree growing there. It's like Ronald Reagan said, you know, I have a dream that every American can have a pink bungalow. Okay, you got the man-eating plant that likes meat. He's going to eat Donald's. Donald extracts himself. Look it up in your junior woodchuck's guidebook. I don't know the answers to anything, and I'm going to keep it that way. So the message is trying to be smart gets you into trouble. Weather's warming up. He's got an ad in paper. Back to trying to make a living. Okay, he's going to feed people's pets. And he's got this giant dog here, and the amount of meat the pet must be given. The pet likes to a bit of play as well. There's another one here. So we've got the hummingbirds going around a pot of sugar water. Okay, a bark spider. Spiderella is old and feeble. You must catch her several fat, fresh flies. You got the elephant, and the kids figure out they can just drop a few fence pails so the elephant can get directly at the straw. And here we're back to the hedge again next to the bungalow. And he thinks the anteater is a dog. Doesn't know why he's got honey all over him, which attracts the ants. And the anteater comes to the rescue. Okay, he's jumped in the pool that's full of sharks of various varieties, as well as some other fish. Electric eels. And Donald's finished in a total wreck at the end of this adventure. Okay, well, this is a common one. People sitting in the backyard in the old days. The modern distractions hadn't quite caught on as much. Hot summer. So Scrooge is trying to cause some rain. Goes out to an Indian reservation to find a man who can do a rain dance or something similar. It's advice on where it ends up with Donald's pretending to be the medicine man. But he's actually using some fumes that'll cause rain. Except this day the weather's more suitable for rainmaking. Ajax rain powder. And it's gone too far. But anyway, yeah, his crop of barley is fine. It's gotten enough rain, so the story ends up happily. And this time he's travelling with Daisy Duck, going to a park where he tells them he had a bit of spotted bother in the past. He'd had a job there. He was supposed to clean this giant head carved on the mountain, and he ends up wrecking it. He's got the battle with the eagle. This is, one of the things. So you got this Sparks naturalistic ego, eagle fighting Donald the anthropomorphic animal. So what do you reckon, Davids? This is this sort of Sparks sort of typical artwork. So I don't know how many artists could sort of duplicate that. They could probably duplicate it, but they probably couldn't have originated it. This is very much distinctively Barks' comic work, isn't it?
Yeah, he was a master of the form, and the animation and the spirit was certainly top notch.
Well, the comics first appeared in World War II. And the sort of those first years where you say he was at his strongest, and I sort of agree. But yeah, his later ones became more and more domestic. They lacked the force of the early adventures. Even the suburban stories had something stronger about them. This was a sort of a softening that appears in the 1950s. And society was becoming soft. Most people, they had permanent jobs. They could afford a house. Stuff wasn't that expensive. Well, goods were expensive, but the house wasn't expensive. And Donald just doesn't seem to learn. He overdoes it and busts the nose off. Tries to replace it. Fixes it up, and then he's caused more cracks, which he hides. And he happens just to come back to the park when the cracks lead to the breaking of the sculpture again. And he just makes it out. Okay, we're back to the fishbowl, but it's got frogs. And the frogs are using a diving board. I've got some ink stains. Reckon the gyro gear loose can solve the problem. Tries to spray stuff, but he ends up creating holes inside on the cloth. Gyro's got this little aid here, this little creature with the light bulb head. Mucks up the
little helper, yeah.
And the little helper just doesn't know when to quit. Mistakenly, the package is sent to Donald, who was supposed to get something to deal with the algae. Instead, he's thrown dye into the water supply. Cornelius Coots has been memorized again. Right. He's found his original the package he was supposed to get with the bug powder. And everyone's got red stuff. Okay, he's got his little helper there. The little helper's fiddling around with a battery. Okay, the little helper is sucking on a battery. Rightio. Getting some energy. Gyro's got his unicycle with some sort of rocket drive. He has to come up with an answer, and typically he has to knock himself in the head with a mallet to come up with ideas. And the little helper has busted his light bulb head trying to replicate Gyro. And this time he's corrected it to blue when everybody's got the wrong sort of blue. And the little helper is back playing marbles. This is rather nice one. So one of life's little joys is explaining the stars to the wondering minds of children. That isn't a star, boy, that's Jupiter, the biggest of the planets. Well, how many here could spot Jupiter in the night sky? Venus, anybody? Yeah, I like this sort of stuff. So, I go out and look at the sky and spot the planets and stuff like that. So we've got this sort of silhouette sort of image here. So he's got some sort of special dream sort of device where Donald can go into a world of his imagination. Can land on Jupiter, and everything's large size to go with Jupiter. Now this is one of his way out adventures, but there's something not quite right compared to his earlier way out adventures. I think he was more critical with his earlier way out adventures. This is sort of something I don't think he would have done in his earlier days. This is just too far out. It doesn't quite make sense. No, he ends up on Beetlejuice. All right, he goes to Beetlejuice. Got the Indian attack and the giant arrow. And he's looking at Beetlejuice. Fly over the Beetlejuice, and everything's even bigger than on Jupiter. Now, while they're back looking at the sky, it's great to not feel small anymore. I tried to tell the boys a few things about the stars. This is one I remember well, where they're trying to raise prize crops and Donald is trying to raise apples. And Gladstone has won a house next to Donald's. And this shows the end of the story, Gladstone's got a full crop of apples there. And Donald ends up with just a worm-riddled tiny apple after all his efforts. So he goes back in the past, what caused it. guy comes along, well, yeah, tear off half the blossoms, and Donald thinks too literally. He tells them to put a prize-winning pollen there. First, he tears the blossoms in half, which is not the idea. How could I have been so dumb? And he tears exactly half the blossoms off the tree off. Tries to put some pollen there, and all the favourable, expensive pollen ends up on Gladstone's tree. Tries to get some bees to pollinate the blossoms. And Gladstone has got some lemonade, which he throws on the tree, and the bees go for that. Which is not really a thing bees would do. Wasps would do it. Okay, he's going to try and hit it with a shotgun blast. By accident, it fires and it all ends up on Gladstone's tree again. Then he tries pouring apple cider into the ground. And gophers, yeah, remember that scene. The gophers dug tunnels and the apple cider all ends up there. And then Donald goes, yeah, remember that. I'll feed my tree apple jelly. Let's see that trickle along the gopher holes. A hailstorm comes along, knocks all of Donald's apples off, and it just perfectly thins out the apples for Gladstone. And at the end of it, I could probably win the prize, but I'd have to get the apples off the tree. That'd be like work. And he tells Donald he can have the apples if he picks them. And so Donald ends up with the special red sap apples grown and picked by Donald Duck. Gets a prize. Here, Gladstone, a blue ribbon and a 10-cent check from the fair for being the laziest character in Duckburg. I win what? Well, what do you know? I even make it pay. This image here where Gladstone is just knocking the tree with a cane, an apple falls in his hand. I was, reading the 19th century works of the communists, and they had this vision of the future, and they just had such most of the early communists were writers. That's what they did for a living. They just didn't understand work. And they thought, when the revolution comes, this is what society would be like. That would be your work. You're under a fruit tree, and all you have to do is reach out and knock it with the cane, and the fruit falls down. And it was just so unrealistic. And that's the image that came to my head. And this is where it was planted. It's just, people, when they imagine life, imagine an easy life. And of course, you go and actually try to do things, and it's quite hard to do the actual stuff. yeah, had that image in my head, and yeah, this is probably where I got it. There's some wisdom in Donald Duck after all. Of course, Bark had lived in an era of growth. Even though it was hard at first, stuff was getting better each year. And it's particularly after World War II that the growth became so rapid that everybody was doing well. And then you start to find that you're struggling in a world where everybody is doing well. Okay, the kids are going to try and get a job delivering a package. This one I remember actually. Yeah, this one where he's giving them a lecture when they don't have much time on their hands. I'll give you a few worthy maxims to remember. The road to success is a speedway to the go-getter, but a quagmire to the laggard. Let no grass grow on your sidewalks, nor moss between your ears. To the brave belong the fair, and to the brainy the raising wages. Be active, be smart, be in their pitching. So Donald's words of wisdom, which are being put out with a complete irrelevance of what's going on around him. Okay, there's, I think we call these things in Australia flying foxes, so they're using a laundry line as a flying fox. And they find a lion in the house. And he wonders why his previous delivery boys have disappeared. And trying to get past the lion. Try to give the lion steaks, but he knocks them back. They find the owner, wake him up, and it turns out the lion only likes imported zebra chops. And that was what was in the package. And after that, Donald decides to pay the boys to do nothing so he doesn't get into trouble anymore. Well, he got the kids on a sled, which was a common pursuit back in those days. Gladstone looks down, which is unusual for him. What's the matter, Gladstone? Did you lose your good luck charm? No, doggone it, but for once I wish I had. There's such a thing as being too lucky, and today I really hit the jackpot. I met some club women who had a Christmas stocking full of jelly beans. Trying to guess the number of jelly beans, and I won the prize. I ended up with a reindeer, which in a very few hours a beast will have to be fed, which will be work. And not only that, can't you sell him? Sell him for the love of jingle bells. Who would want a reindeer? Well, the kids take the reindeer off his hand, presenting to Donald as a gift. Oh, no, they don't. They're trying to hide it. Okay, well, that's clever. The reindeer has become a trophy head, which One side, let me at that wild beast. He's escaped. Ah, look at my buckshot did to your Christmas presents. These rugged frontier jackets I intend to surprise you with. Oh, well, they're content that they've got their reindeer still pulling the sled. Okay, that's the end of the comics for this one.
It's volume
Showing
18.
Yeah, I didn't get. Sometimes I give these ones a little bit of a read where they make a commentary on each story. I think, yeah, the one that one of the ones, the one where he's trying to do the apples is one of my favourite stories. I'll see what it's got to say about them. Well, the cover's got jumping beans. And some chicks made a nest of his hat. Yeah, there was a previous story where he was guarding the coastline. He was a coast watcher, trying to watch out for spies. Borderline hero. Donald is a border patrol agent on a stretch of desert that, if real, could only be somewhere on the US-Mexican border, as suggested by the silhouettes of the two guys wearing sombreros and ponchos, and by Donald's nephews boarding at a nursery school in Palo
Yeah.
Casaba. Well, I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah, partial remake of a previous story where he'd been a Coast Guard. Okay, well, this is the comic book cover. This is the thing that's going to sell it, sitting in the shop. What's the price? 10 cents. Yeah, wages in America became quite high at the time. What would have peak week's wage been at the time? $25. Yeah, wages are quite high, and now your basic wage in America is quite low. Like, for example, 10 cents to an ounce of gold, the personal ownership of gold had been banned, or bullion anyway. So the comic cost a 350th of an ounce of gold. And in today's money, that would be like 4,000 divided by 350. Oh, I haven't got that right. Okay. What's that work out at? $11 for a comic. That probably sounds about right. What do you reckon, David? How much would a Donald Duck comic be in America today if you bought a single equivalent?
Yeah, the comics today, yeah, they're around about $3.50, maybe $4. Sure.
Alrighty-o, so gold's overvalued. We've worked it out by comics. Or either that or comics are going to catch up with gold and they're going to get to $10. Only two ways to go. When government economic policy is screwed up, it's sort of like you're driving down the street with a loose steering wheel. You've got a choice. You can either crash on the deflation side or you can crash on the inflation side. And this is what's going to happen. Take your pick. I don't know how long Donald the First of America can stave it off, but at some point, my guess is he's going to have to inflate the currency too, because the debt payments are just too large. But he might be able to hold off for a year or two. Maybe he can leave it to the next administration. There we are, red apple sap. In the late 1950s, we find Barks in his coziest period. His stories have developed a predictability that never descended into mediocrity. Yet it still gives careful readers a sense that they may have read some incarnation of his of this month's 10-pager before, being the master he was. However, Barks still managed to tweak a few new angles out of his tropes here and there. We've seen the frustrated Donald go to great expense and effort to top the lazy Gladstone and fail before. But have we ever seen Gladstone so lazy that he simply does not care about Donald's frustration period? That's the brilliance of red apple sap. There is no competition between the cousins. Donald's year-long attempt to win first prize for apple harvesting at the county fair will turn out to be inevitably a miserable failure. Meanwhile, Gladstone's laziness has reached its zenith, or its nadir. He sleeps in the lawn chair all year as Donald battles the elements. Predictably, nature conspires with Gladstone's luck, so that all of Donald's nurturing solely benefits the tree on Gladstone's property. Since we've seen this type of story before, we expect an ending in which Gladstone's luck outright sabotages Donald's earnest efforts. Or we see said luck ultimately work in Donald's favour and upstage Gladstone's victory. But here's where Barks adds his new twist. They both win, and not at the other's expense or embarrassment, albeit, as Donald's little sanctimonious sign and wink indicate, it's a hollow triumph for both of them, but not one for Barks, who even after our countless rereadings still manages to surprise us. Carl Barks in 1982, almost looking like a comic character himself with his nose. Maybe the camera was a bit too close. I was a real misfit, Carl Barks said, thinking back over an early life of hard labour. As a farmer, a logger, a mule skinner, a rivet heater and a printing press feeder. Well, that was a job I did. I used to work on a printing press at one stage. Before he was hired as a full-time cartoonist for an obscure risque magazine in 1931. Barks was born in 1901 and mostly raised in Merrill, Oregon. He had always wanted to be a cartoonist, but everything that happened to him in his early years seemed to stand in his way. He suffered a significant hearing loss after a bout with measles. His mother died. He had to leave school after the 8th grade. His father suffered a mental breakdown, which was quite common, amongst men, that they weren't able to live up to the breadwinner role. His older brother was whisked off to World War I. His first marriage in 1921 was to a woman who was unsympathetic to his dreams and who ultimately bore 2 children by accident, as Barks phrased it. The two divorced in 1930. In 1931, he pulled up stakes from Merrill and headed to Minnesota, leaving his mother-in-law, whom he trusted more than his wife, in charge of his children. Arriving in Minneapolis, he went to work for the Calgary Eye-Opener, the risque magazine. He thought he would finally be drawing cartoons full-time, but the editor and most of the staff were alcoholics. Well, there's a fine tradition in the good old days. It's an interesting thing that I was born on the tail end of this age. I was already seeing the new world coming in. So I was born in an age when everything closed down on Sunday. And there just weren't as many distractions. So alcoholism had been quite a common thing. And well, I suppose we compare that with modern day drug taking. So I guess in a certain sense, it hasn't changed. There are a lot of people that use drugs these days, but I certainly like a drink. I used to smoke cigarettes at one stage, but managed to give them up. In 1935, he took a great gamble, and the strength of some cartoons he'd submitted in response to an advertisement from the Disney studio, he moved to California and entered an animation trial period. He was soon promoted to storyman in Disney's Donald Duck animation unit, where he made significant contributions to 36 Donald cartoon shorts between 1936 and 1942, including helping to create Huey, Dewey, and Louie for Donald's nephews in 1938. Ultimately, though, he grew dissatisfied. The production of animated cartoons by committee, as he described it, stifled his imagination. Well, there you go. Do you want to work with a committee? Or do you want to be just working on your own project? It's like the dentist I went to who pulled my tooth was an implantologist. And when I first met him, he was grim-faced, and then he became happy later. And he said he used to work in a place which was, he was working for somebody else. You had like a committee environment, and he was always struggling to get a room for, dealing with patients and stuff like that. Then he set up on his own, and it was all smiles after that. He could work as he pleased. So is that an education in life or what? It says something that for a lot of people, working on your own, if you're an artist, is the way to go. Not having to jump hoops for anybody else. In 1942, he left Disney to run a chicken farm. But when he was offered a chance by Western Publishing to write and illustrate new series of Donald Duck comic book stories, he jumped at it. The comic book format suited him, and the quality of his work persuaded the editors to grant him a freedom and autonomy he'd never known, and few others would ever be granted. He could go on to write and draw more than 6,000 pages in over 500 stories and uncounted hundreds of covers between 42 and 66 for Western's Dell and Gold Key imprints. Well, in Australia, of course, they did separate printings of the Gold Key and Dell comics. So they were different printings from those that were circulated in America. Barks had almost no formal art training. He had taught himself how to draw by imitating his early favourite artists. Windsor McKay, Little Nemo, Frederick Opper, Happy Hooligan, Elsie Seeger, Popeye, and Floyd Gottfredson, Mickey Mouse. He taught himself how to write well by going back to the grammar books he had shunned in school, making up jingles and rhymes and inventing other linguistic exercises to get a natural feel for the rhythm and dialogue of sequential narrative. Barks married again in 1938 to see if they could, all right, okay, what did it do? Oh, well, jumped off to Barks married again in 1938, but the union ended disastrously in divorce in 1951. In 1954, Barks married Margaret Winifred Williams, known as Gary, who soon began assisting him by lettering and inking backgrounds on his comic book work. And they remained happily together until her death. Ah, yeah, that's funny. I had a great-grandmother, Esther Winifred Roberts, and she had some of her family had migrated to America, where she'd migrated to Australia. Actually, I did have my great-great-grandfather's oldest brother had migrated to America. The rest of the family came to Australia. He came out to Australia to join him for a while, but he found Australia too backwards and went back to America. He died in Los Angeles in 1922 with a small fortune, which he could make in America in those days. Unfortunately, at that time, America was full of crooks. This was America of the 19th and early 20th century. It was just, you couldn't trust the professionals. If they could get away with it, a lot of them would rob you. A person was honest only on their own merits. And it was very difficult to get to the law. So the crooked lawyers stole all the money. It wasn't until World War II where the American embassy became rather helpful during World War II that they were able to catch up with the crooked lawyer, but it was only about a tenth of the money left. He married Margaret Winifred Williams, known as Gara, and soon began assisting him by lettering and inking backgrounds on his comic book work. They remained happily married till her death in 1993. Well, I don't know. This is a message. You've got to be careful about who you marry, because marriage depends on the community that surrounds you and what you do. So I think, what were the 3 prescriptions for happiness? The 3 prescriptions for happiness, I'm trying to remember now, is to have a job you like doing, be surrounded by people you like, and to have something to look forward to. And I guess Barks might have found all 3. And so the marriage that works is he finds a wife who's sympathetic to his work and actually enjoys helping him. And that's the marriage that lasts. So there's your advice in life. Don't take the plunge unless you find a situation. I think one of the things where marriage fails is we live in a very atomized society. And in the past, it was community pressure, positive or negative, which kept marriages together. But, then it became the nuclear family and the pressure wasn't there anymore. But if you find somebody who you have something in common with, it looks like, a successful marriage is dependent on having some things in common. Going against the advice of the Greek philosopher who said that you need to complement each other as well, but there's probably some truth in that. He did his work in the California desert and often mailed his stories to the office. Well, yeah, a lot of his imagery was from the desert. So he was touring a few places around the West Coast. So, yeah, a lot of his imagery was of the West Coast, although Duckburg seems to have been an East Coast city because it had a Pilgrim founder. Barks was not a vain man, but he had confidence in his talent. He knew that what hard work was, and he knew that he'd put his best efforts into every story he produced. On those occasions when he did go into Weston's offices, he would just dare anybody to see if they can improve on it. His confidence was justified. His work was largely responsible for some of the best-selling comic books in the world, Walt Disney's Comics and Stories and Uncle Scrooge. Because Weston's policy was to keep their writers and artists anonymous, readers never knew the name of the good duck artist, but they could spot the superiority of his work when fans determined to solve the mystery and his anonymity was finally tracked him down, not unlike an adventure Huey, Dewey and Louie might embark on. Barks was quite happy to correspond and otherwise communicate with the legion of Affiandos, given all the obstacles of his early years and the dark days that haunted him off and on for the rest of his life. It's remarkable that he laughed so easily and loved to make others laugh. In the process of expanding Donald Duck's character beyond the hot-tempered Donald of animation, Barks created a movable locale, Duckburg, and a cast of dynamic characters, Scrooge McDuck, the Beagle Boys, Gladstone Gander, Gyro Gearloose, and the Junior Woodchucks. And there were hundreds of others who made only one memorable appearance in the engaging, imaginative, and unpredictable comedy adventures that he wrote and drew from scratch for nearly a quarter of a century. Among many other honours, Carl Barks was one of the 3 initial inductees into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame for comic book creators in 1987. The 2 others were Jack Kirby and Will Eisner. In 1991, Barks became the only Disney comic book artist to be recognised as a Disney legend, a special award created by Disney to acknowledge and honour the many individuals whose imagination, talents and dreams seem to have dreams have created the Disney magic. As Roy Disney said on Barks' passing in 2000 at the age of 99, he challenged our imaginations and took us on some of the greatest adventures we have ever known. His prolific comic book creations entertained many generations of devoted fans and influenced countless artists over the years. His timeless tales will stand as a legacy to his originality and brilliant artistic vision. Okay, these are the commentators. Okay, well, these are the stories. 192, 193, up into 214. So going by this, well, it's not exactly quite halfway yet, is it? Unless a lot of the later stories got a bit shorter. You had a lot more shorts in the latest stories. Okay.
Volume 18.
Yeah, well, each volume's about $50 in Australia.
We started at the beginning. We do 1 volume a month. You guys want to stick around? Volume 19 next month. Year and a half. So
What is the next volume? Do you know? Do you know what stories?
Oh, okay. I haven't checked out the next volume.
Next month.
Maybe Dave can check it out.
Yeah.
Only certain stories I tend to remember. There's probably a few stories I've forgotten I read, but some really just stick in your mind for ages. You know, I'm remembering this stuff which I looked at originally over 50 years ago.
Must be quite amazing to see it again, though, you know, and reread what you made. So you were what? You said you were pretty young at the time. You were what? A young
Well,
child?
I was born in 1960, so I think the Donald Duck comics started coming through probably in the late 60s. You know, walk into what we called a milk bar in Australia, which you'd call a corner store, and you'd have the Donald Duck comics along with others in a comic book stand. I think they were about 15 cents each at the time.
Wow.
And occasionally she'd buy me one, so I'd end up with a stack of them that was probably about, I don't know,
I didn't
two
know.
or 3 feet high by the early 70s.
Oh,
There were some
nice.
other comics as well. I think my dad used to buy the occasional comic, but he wouldn't buy Donald Duck usually. He'd get some sort of a adventure comic or something like that. And I have to say that I prefer a lot of the stories back then. I mean, the artwork you see in a lot of the modern comics is way in advance of what they did back then. But the storylines, you know, sort of spoke to me better as a kid back then. I remember picking up a comic called Gunmaster, which quite fascinated me. So you had this guy who's sort of like a Lone Ranger figure with a sidekick, sort of like he was sort of like Batman. He had a Robin-like character, but he's dressed up as a Western hero. And he had all these different sorts of special guns. And the comic book illustrator would detail all the guns, and then you had other stories which would recount history, which I used to love. I think I used a comic to base a high school essay on the 30 Years' War, and nobody knew anything about the 30 Years' War. And I realised later on that I'd gotten the story rather wrong, but the teacher was most impressed, knowing absolutely nothing about the 30 Years' War, and gave me sort of like an A for it. And it was all based on what I'd read in the comic book.
Sounds like a fun essay to write. I didn't know he was still around in the 2000s though. It was like I like to try to like research who I can and see who's still around. And it would have been nice to like he apparently went to a Comic-Con, which I thought was super interesting. It would have been nice to like go to a Comic-Con and um meet this person. Name was it Clark or
Karl Barks.
Carl Barks? Yeah, I think that would have been a really cool experience. But I mean, he would have been really old by then. But still, you know, the fact that Disney creators were still alive and some of them still are, some of the animators and stuff. Comic Cons have been going on that long. It's just meet a community of people. I didn't know Comic Cons had been going on that long. And so I guess he was 30 when he started writing Donald Duck too. Because it said it was like 19.
Well, he's working for Disney for the moving cartoons, and then he got dissatisfied working with other people, and then in the early war years, they offered him the role of doing the comic book illustrations. Oh, he did the stories as well. And they were so impressed by his work, he was given an enormous free hand to do it how he liked.
I'm like, it worked out with the 200 volumes that he ended up making. I'm not-
Well, it seems David saying it was about 600 stories, or some of them were short. But as time goes on, David was saying that he thought it was the early work which was the best.
Yeah.
And I'd say, yeah, it's his stuff he was coming up with in the that post-war period between 1945 and 1950 or 1952 were probably his strongest work.
Yeah, we're past the peak, but it's still very good work, though. Still very good.
Okay, here we go. A convention appearances, 1977, San Diego. Barks made his first appearance at an event, greeted by a massive lines of fans. Okay, 1978, LA Times timeline, noted as his official featured guest alongside other icons like Jack Kirby. 1982, San Diego. Barks returned as a featured guest, meeting fans and signing lithographs. So, okay, he's had 2 or 3 conventions that he attended. Okay, right. 1977 and 1982. So he was in his early 80s, which is probably still quite lucid and fit. As an 80-year-old, of course, by the time he was getting close to 100, the guy that runs our local philosophical society is going to turn 90 this year, and he's still running all the groups.
Yeah, Barks died at 99, and everyone says who knew him, he was sharp right up to the very end. He was still walking around under his own power and still very sharp and communicative.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, 2000 he died, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Age 99.
All right.
Well,
Well,
what a
like
legacy.
1982, I went to the World Science Fiction Convention, I think was it 1985? And, met some of the famous science fiction writers.
Did there happen to be Star Trek there that year? Like Clark? I don't know if you're familiar. Oh, were you in Australia or America?
Australia.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Sorry.
There was a Star Trek fandom club, but I never really. I think I might have gone to one meeting. Yeah, more or less, I just went to the World Con a couple of times. I think they had another one in the 90s. Of course, by that time, the old and the greats had started to disappear, but there was still a few around in the mid 80s.
Okay.
I actually met one of the guy. I think actually, yeah, the NASA guy who collaborated with Kubrick to make 2001, and I listened to his speech, and I came up and had a chat with him afterwards, and nobody else was interested, oddly enough. And he was describing to me the layout of the Discovery, if you've ever seen the film 2001.
The Odyssey 2001 from
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick, where Hal takes over. I haven't actually watched that. It's like super, like, it's mentioned in a lot of movies, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. I've watched other Kubrick films, but not that particular one.
Yeah, you really have to be in the state of mind that, I think modern people have got shorter attention spans, but say a film like 2001 would work, say in the 60s and 70s, but by the 80s, the new range of young people just found it very long and dull.
It's
I
also
found that film fascinating. I went to rewatch it several times.
Yeah, I think it's one of those films that I like. Maybe it's like more critical about society. Like it has a huge statement it's trying to make about the human condition. So it definitely seems like highly intellectual. I do have to be in a certain frame of mind to sit down and watch it more critically, I guess, and try to get the message that it is trying to make you think about. But yeah, it's definitely something I've got to sit down and watch because I know it's like one amazing film.
Well, it was working on the back of the space race. And so, on one hand, it's a conventional story about space flight, which isn't too far outside the realms of technology. But it had to have an adventure in it to make it interesting. So, the adventure is the confrontation with AI.
Becoming more relevant, I guess.
Well, the joke in it is, Kubrick's imagining that modern society was dulling people down. You look at somebody like Karl Barks from an older era, and he is full of character. He's a product of his times. We're a product of our times, and our times don't create character. It creates people who are a little bit zombified.
It's the that's the recording on the TV. They did.
Well, in the film, the people look dull, and the machines are flashy. HAL 9000, the computer, has more personality than the astronauts. Until was it Kerr Duella? Was it Gary Oldman? I think was the other astronaut. He appeared in one of the pilots of Star Trek with Hot Lips from the movie.
You're high forever.
Star Trek would that have been? Was it the I don't even remember the name of that one. Let me see. There's a lot of them. Was it the one with William Shatner? No.
You have fun. So what's that long?
Can you hear me?
Want to know how long it took you to start getting turned on?
That's not. What the fuck? Hello?
Mhm.
Well, okay, so
I'll talk to you about
the message in the film is the astronaut has to overcome the AI, and he recovers his humanity, and then goes on to be the Superman. So, of course, Kubrick drew heavily on Nietzsche and Jung to make the film 2001.
Yeah, well, it's around 32 volumes, and we're a little past the halfway mark, so another year and a half, I think, if we're going to go all the way to the end, which we may or may not. We may not. We'll see. We'll decide as we go.
It'll depend on the quality of the stories, I suppose, whether I
But
keep.
next month we're set for volume 19, and then we'll just keep going until we get bored. It's been a year and a half so far. It's been quite a journey.
Okay, yeah, well, it's looked like it's about the 2 hours are up, so you can come back next month or in between.
Yeah, so
We're here each week at the same time usually.
you got the next one for next week. It's lengthy, so I will leave it to you to decide how much of it you'd like to read, Stephen. If you could,
Right, Capital and Ideology, a
You get
graphic
all-
novel, yeah.
if you get all the way to the end, that would be fine. If you do not, then I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not we continue, or you've read enough, or if you'd like to just do it again.
Well, it's only 176 pages. I guess it's how thick the story is. Yeah, if it's interesting stuff, I always love this sort of stuff that might give me insights
No, I don't do this.
into culture.
They just
You
let-
would like this stuff. I was no part of it. I had no.
Anyway, I've developed a bit of a bad back and I'm going to be hitting the Existential Society on Zoom in Australia.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to join, I could give you the, let's see, where's the, right, here we are.
It's 176 pages, but they're chewy. Takes a lot of effort to read through it. But
There's the,
if you don't make it all the way to the end, then
reader. Somebody's
do-
talking about Jesus.
2 weeks. But I'll let that be your decision. And I take requests, guys. If you got something you'd like to cover, let me know. Lay it on me. We'll see if we can cover it one of these weeks. We're here every Friday night at this time. And all of the other meetings that you see on the schedule, some of them I do, but a lot of them are other groups. If you ever have any trouble, just shoot me a message. I'll see what I can do to help you connect if you're having any trouble.
Oh, well, if anybody wants to join the Existential Society in Melbourne in an hour's time, well, there's the exact link. There you go. Anyway, I've got to make tracks. So it was nice meeting you, Jesse, and nice meeting you, Inez.
Okay. I'm gonna nice to meet you all.
Yeah, sure, Jesse. Catch it on next cartoon viewing, I guess.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Okay.
All
Good
right.
meeting everyone. Bye, everyone.
Okay, yeah, I'll just take the chat, save chat, and off I go. Catch you next time, David.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye, Ines. Unless you have. Okay. Catch you next time. We're here every Friday night at this time.